All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another Expert Advice Live from Student Doctor Network. Tonight, we're going to be going over personal statement essays with Dr. Emil Chuck, the Head of Advising Services for the Health Professional Student Association. Dr. Chuck, how are you doing this evening?
Good. Hope everybody's doing well. How are you, Kyle?
I need to write my personal statement. What do I do? Tell me.
Well, we could definitely start off with the first question then. I guess if you're on this call, you want affirmation that you're quote doing your personal statement right. So let's see. Let's go with the first set of questions then.
Sounds good to me. So, first off, when should I begin writing a personal statement?
So, when should you begin writing a personal statement? Certainly depends on who you talk to. There are a lot of us who are in the advising world who really, say you probably should have begun writing your personal statement in your freshman year, or at least as soon as you really figured you really wanted to be a health professional, one way or another. So, if you aren't in that pool of people who've been constantly writing, doing a journal, doing all of those reflections since quote unquote day one, however you wish to define it. Certainly, if you're thinking about writing a personal statement, today is a really good day to begin, even if you aren't going to be applying for another year or a couple of years. It's really important to know that these types of questions in terms of writing your personal statement. It's pretty much a rite of passage for anybody who is going to be applying to any professional program, whether it's a personal statement for health professions programs, for graduate school, for law school, whatever else. It's obviously an opportunity for you to clarify, how you discern this is a career path that you really feel very strongly about pursuing. And no good time than the present to really begin that if you want to really put your pieces together. Of course, for many of you, if the reason why you're on this call is you probably began starting your personal statement, hopefully as early as the start of the actual calendar year in January or February, when you probably realized if you're going to be applying at this time in May or June, you probably want to get through that whole process of writing about why you want to go and become a health professional. Many of you also likely had additional sort of institutional pressure because you were trying to look for, a committee letter or institutional letter, maybe even having some document to present to people who you're requesting letters of recommendation for. So for many of you, you probably started really early a few months ago to maybe a couple of weeks ago to really express what you're thinking about. And, you're now in the process of really fine tuning your message. And that's hopefully what this webinar will be really about. So granted, you could start really early, you could start really, really soon. Doesn't really matter. You have to do it. And hopefully, whatever urgency you have, I hope you find this conversation that we'll have useful for you.
Absolutely. And any questions you guys might have, please put them in the chat and we'll make sure to get them answered. So, next question, what makes a great personal statement?
So, what makes a great personal statement? Again, you could probably scour all of the internet. We have a lot of articles that are written in our forum section about various people who have their own ideas about what really makes a good personal statement. So, I usually use a bunch of analogies, and a lot of other people will too. Essentially, what makes a great personal statement is we get an idea of why you're pursuing this health professional career and what you expect of yourself in that type of role, in terms of what vision you have for wanting to pursue this particular profession. You have certain ideas of the people or communities you wish to serve. You have an ideas of what strengths you bring to the profession, and certainly what things that in terms of your life experiences or things that you've witnessed, you can also bring to the table to affect better patient care, or to make a big change in terms of the way healthcare is administered in this country or wherever, or even around the world. So what makes a great personal statement is that it's a very clear vision. It's very concisely written, of course, in English for obvious reasons, since we're talking in English here. And we want to just make sure that it's very relatable. You don't know who's going to be reading your personal statement, so I pretty much advise anybody. You can imagine anybody who is like a learned, Nobel Prize laureate level professor of, doing, hardcore research, to somebody who is, at the ground roots level of working with public health, So you could go research, you can go fully clinical, you can do completely administrative, including people who are involved with student services, diversity, learning services, whatever have you. And even certainly even lay individuals for whatever reason. So they could be alumni, they could be past admissions professionals that want to do this and just haven't let go of that job, so they are doing this quote for fun as a part-time job to help their peers. So you just never know who's reading your personal statement. So it's got to be relatable to a broad audience and not necessarily just to the so-called most highly intellectualized class in the academia world or in academia hierarchy. So if a patient can't understand it, you're probably not doing a great job. Certainly if a 10-year-old can't understand it, you're probably going a little bit too above their level in some cases. It just really depends. But it really needs to be relatable to a broad variety of audiences and not just people who are learned, physicians or healthcare professionals.
Makes sense. All right. And again, any questions you guys have, please just put them in the chat. So the next question, and this is a good one. How do I choose an experience for a personal statement?
Well, okay. So an experience for a personal statement, that obviously depends on you. I am not you. I don't know what experiences you have on the table. So clearly, you have to start with this starting material. You have to have a broad number of experiences, and experiences you can easily reflect upon as it relates to why you are motivated to pursue a health professional career, whatever happens. Let me switch over to the slide over here. I like to use the TMD-SAS, the Texas Medical Dental Application Service, because they're actually coming up. If you're working on the TMD-SAS application, they just opened up on May 1st. They're actually open for submissions in the middle of May. So you could, if you're probably in a much more urgent state of panic when it comes to writing your personal statement. So, as you can probably see from whether you're applying to dental, medical, podiatry, or veterinary medicine, in a lot of these cases, they're really asking for things like your motivation to seek a career in medicine. Sometimes they'll ask you about the value of your experiences. They might even ask about your philosophy of the profession and your goals. So first of all, definitely read the prompts, but make sure you have experiences that really reflect why you're motivated to pursue the career that you really want to pursue. And again, the values that you are imparting upon each experience. If, in terms of dentistry, which is certainly one of my fortes, I like to tell people, tell me, you really enjoy working with teeth. You really enjoy working with your hands. You really enjoy working in really tight spaces. You really enjoy, being an independent owner or at least a partner of a private clinic if you are allowed to do that. And, having to set your own hours and building your own team. From your experiences shadowing or perhaps working in dental clinics, what are some of the insights that you've had that really tell you, hey, this is what you really want to do for 20, 30 years of your life. So those are things that really are important in terms of choosing experiences for a personal statement. Now, certainly for many other people, and it depends on the prompt, for TMD-SAS, they're very special. They have a number of different personal statements, including this personal characteristics statement. So again, you can talk about and you can see what the prompts are asking about. Describe personal qualities, characteristics, or lived experiences that could enrich the educational experience of others. So this is a required personal characteristics essay of everyone applying to TMD-SAS. Certainly for those of you also applying to any other health professions program, you should be thinking a little bit about that too. This is often a prompt that people incorporate into their general personal statement as well. So in terms of an experience for a personal statement, again, what are the qualities that you feel enrich the educational experience of others? So the value that experience should have, if you share that with your peers or your faculty members, what are you able to teach people about what you've seen or observed in terms of your life journey or any other experiences that you've had, including, community service or, being in a different job before coming to the realization that you want to be a health professional in healthcare. There also may be other experiences that people also will tend to incorporate into their personal statement, such as this what is listed here as an optional essay, but as you can kind of see here in this warning for all the vet applicants for TMD SAS, the 3 essays are required now for the vet applicants for TMD SAS. So, even if you're not applying to vet med, you may want to actually answer this question. So it's not as optional as you think it is, but you can see the prompt. Describe any unique circumstances or life experiences that are relevant to your application that have not been previously presented. So again, in this situation, it's like, is there something really important that we should know about you, your background, any challenges you've overcome, any specific experience that really were essential or really important for us to understand why you want to go and pursue a health professional career. And for that purpose, it's not, while it's not necessarily considered a quote personal statement in the AMCAS application and also in the CASPA application for those applying to physician assistant programs, there is an additional prompt available to you regarding other impactful experiences or life experiences. And so for that, you can talk about other contexts that you understand about your life that's really important for other people to know about you. So that can often be either incorporated into a unified personal statement, or if the application service allows, it is set aside. So how do you choose an experience? Well, certainly I think the important part, if you want to summarize it up, it's the value that you feel this experience has when you share it with your peers or with your faculty members. Why should they know this a little bit about you and the experiences and your reflections that you've had? And so for a personal statement, that's something that's very important. You will have many other opportunities to talk about other experiences throughout the rest of your application in general.
Okay, perfect. Next question. What themes do AdComs want in personal statements? Do you want me to leave up the TMD SAS info?
Yeah, let me see if I can scroll back up here. And I think I hit a lot of the general themes. And again, first of all, the most important part is read the prompt. Read the prompt. Let us know, what do AdComs want? Usually the prompt will tell you, it will tell you, explain your motivation to seek a career in medicine. Or again, discuss your philosophy of the dental profession and indicate your goals. So a lot of times the prompt will tell you what they want in the personal statement. If it's not explicit or expressly clear, in general, they want to see why you want to pursue this particular career. What do you want? What do you expect of yourself in pursuit of that profession? And what attracts you to it? Why do you really want to do that instead of some other possible career at this point in time in your life? Again, this is not a contract where you have to fulfill this over the remainder of your life. At least at the snapshot that we have of you as an applicant at this point, why do you feel this is the profession that you should pursue? Why are you motivated, and what do you expect of yourself in terms of your education, your impact as a graduating student? What do you want to have as your strengths by the time you are out there? So certainly that's one of the things that AdComs really look for in personal statements. I would certainly say anything related to, your motivations and even getting to know who you are as an individual, why you'd be someone that we would want to interview or even want to have in our classes. That's also very important as well. So I think in general, those are the themes that most admissions committee members really want on the ground level.
Well, thanks for breaking that down. Sorry for the little switcheroo here. Kyle ran into some technical difficulties, and so I'm taking over. I'm Laura Turner. I'm the Executive Director for the Health Professional Student Association. And again, I want to remind people, if you are watching this and you want to ask a question, please feel free to put those in the comments under YouTube or under LinkedIn or Facebook, wherever you are watching this live stream right now. And we will bring your questions up and answer them here live on air. Okay. So let's go ahead. Is there anything else you wanted to show us on the TMD SAS right now? Or do you want to talk a little bit about the other impactful experiences in the AMCAS and the other application services?
Yeah, so I think I will add one other thing. What themes or what do AdComs really want? I will highlight the fact that there are constraints. You have 5,000 characters for TMD SAS. I believe you have 5,300 characters for ACOMAS as well as for AMCAS. I think ADSAS still is doing 4,500 characters and so forth. The optional essay in TMD SAS is 2,500 characters. And then you see, even in TMD SAS, they have other essays where you could talk about your interest in MD PhD, DO PhD, or DDS PhD. And you see there are specific prompts for those, and they have their own specific limitations too. So again, as I mentioned, pay attention to the fact that each of these essays also have character limits. If you go to the AMCAS MD PhD essay, there are 2 of them, and I believe one of them is, 3,000 characters, and the other is like 10 times as large. So pay attention to the prompts. You know what they want because they will tell you what they want. It's not magic. And therefore, I really want you to pay attention to the details. They are very important. Do you have to go all the way up to the 5,000th character in these specific essays? You don't have to fill the purse all the way up to the brim. You can leave yourself a little space, but just understand, going over is not very helpful. And be very mindful, copy paste. Don't just copy from like Word into the text boxes. Oftentimes when you do that, you also import hidden characters and formatting characters that will really mess up the presentation of your essay when people view it. So it's always recommended, if you have to, type directly into the box. If you need to, just use a simple ASCII character or text box or whatever else, or convert everything to just plain text, and then you should be able to copy and paste there. So these are the technical things that you should be paying attention to, and that you really don't want something that dumb to screw you up. So please make sure you're on point technically with all of your writing.
Yeah, so that's a good point that I think people probably might not necessarily think of, is that those cut and pastes sometimes do weird things. So make sure you're checking that out and looking at it before you hit that submit. Okay, so moving on from themes, switching over to the other impactful experiences. Do you feel like you already covered this a little bit with Kyle, or do you want to go into a little more detail?
Well, I can try and go into a little bit more detail about other impactful experiences. So that's the term that we use for the AMCAS application. It also is the term for a similar application essay for IRIS, which is the application for residencies. So once you become a fourth-year medical student in MD or DO, there is also the same prompt will appear again. CASPA is for physician assistants. They've called it the life experiences essay, but it's essentially the same thing except different character lengths. Again, so what does other impactful experiences really entail? We do have presentations and some articles that are on the forums that I know we can share with all of you here. If you're on YouTube, we'll probably put them in the link in the description section. Please read those. It really talks about, it's an opportunity for you to park information about your life journey and things that we really need to know about you as an individual and what has shaped you to become the person that you are, and perhaps shape your decision to pursue, at least for these examples, medicine. So we really try to articulate what some of these impactful experiences can comprise. What I like to tell people a little bit is, in the AMCAS application, it's about 1,325 characters. That's the same number of characters as you would for a most meaningful experience essay and work and activities. So the best way that I can explain it is, it's an extra most meaningful activity or most meaningful experience box. But in this case, you're not going to talk about stuff that has been done, say, since you've been an undergrad, or at least things that you would list in your work and work activities experiences. It would be something that happened that preceded it, even including in your childhood. So for those of you who are non-traditional students and you've been at a job for a number of different years, that's possibly some place where you can park some information about what your past career was really about. For many others, if you're talking about what used to be, this particular prompt replaces what has previously been called the, quote, disadvantaged essay. How do you consider yourself disadvantaged? There's a negative connotation that comes with asking a question in that way. So we really spun this prompt to be a lot more positive, or at least be more accepting of more positive experiences. So yeah, we could talk about, yes, you grew up in a very poor part of your city. Yes, you probably, had limited access to food because you lived in a food desert. Your house might have had lead paint. Those sorts of things that you can articulate that really give a little bit of a color or a context to your interest in medicine, or your, any sort of challenges that you've had that probably, you didn't realize might have set you back from being fully prepared for college, for example. You could talk about some of those in that space or in those areas. We have a list of categories that we write about, and we have even a small YouTube short that really tries to highlight many of those categories for you. But it is only 1,325 characters. It is not an opportunity to basically, list everything into your life that you feel was a disadvantage or that set you back. It is not, in my mind, a really great spot for you to talk about why you got a B+ or a B- in a particular class. That's not where this belongs. What really belongs are really significant, hurdles that you've had to surmount, or the fact that you've surmounted a hurdle because of participation in a program, or your opportunities to, be part of this amazing, say, study abroad trip, where you're doing something like related to public health. So you've done Peace Corps or AmeriCorps or something like that. It can be something positive. It does not have to be, something that is, really detrimental or you feel is like a huge setback. This is not a confessional. This is not a place for us to compare how poor our circumstances really are. It really is something that is meant to really shine a light on things that are really important, that again bring value to the rest of your your learning community, whether it's be your students or faculty as well. So I hope that gives you an idea. Other impactful experiences allows you to really park those personal stories in a little bit of a different section, as opposed to within your personal statement, which, if you did put in your personal statement, it probably is fine. But for a lot of people, it tends to be a big distraction from the real main assignment, which is to explain your motivation and the value of your experiences to prepare you to be a health professional. So it's a strategic area where you can put that information, and that's the advice that I give when it comes to those types of essays. It really helps your personal statement keep more focused, while also give an opportunity for you to really talk about some of those major challenges in your life that you really may not be able to fit anyplace else.
Yeah. So to summarize, what you're saying is that your personal statement should really be your why, like why you want to go into a particular field, be it podiatry, medicine, or dentistry. And then the other impactful experiences is really somewhere where you can kind of share those other special things that are about you. So things that may have impacted you that are not necessarily particular reasons why you want to go into the healthcare field that you're pursuing.
Right. So, I mean, even in TMD-SAS, that's kind of what these personal characteristics and optional essays encapsulate. They're not necessarily a typical other impactful experiences if you read the prompts carefully. But on the other hand, these also serve a very similar purpose. So again, if you were to do the so-called optional essay, which is describe any unique circumstances or life experiences relevant to your application that have not been previously presented. That's an example of that. And again, in this case, you've got twice as many characters in TMD-SAS. You got 2,500 characters as opposed to 1,300 characters in AMCAS. So again, it just sort of depends. But yes, that's a way for you to organize very important things that people need to know about you autobiographically. The personal statement in and of itself, I don't want it to just necessarily read like it's your autobiography from the start of your life on to the current time. There are ways that we can organize it. And yes, the personal statement should be really more focused about why you want to pursue this career. What are the specific experiences and insights that you've gained to date from your shadowing or your volunteering that really motivate you or you feel are pushing you in a positive direction towards a health professional career? Yes. Laura, I think you're muted on this. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of in an open area, so I've been trying to mute myself when I am not on. But I did want to remind everyone, if you've just joined us, you can put your comments down below in the comments area for whatever platform you're watching this on, whether that's Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, and we can bring your questions on, and Dr. Chuck will be able to answer those for you live. So please ask your questions so that we can get those answered for you. I'm going to switch over now to a question that I think has been popping up just in general in advising and admissions, which is AI tools, ChatGPT, Claude AI, all of those different tools. How should students approach using AI tools in their personal statement?
So first of all, the one thing that I hope everybody universally agrees that you should not ever use AI tools to do is to completely write your personal statement from scratch. You should not let any computer program write your personal statement for you, period. So generative AI tools probably are really useful to help you finesse your writing. And we've done some surveys on the use of Gen AI tools among people who are certainly in medical school, and obviously for those that are applying to the health professions. What we found is that for the most part, whether you're talking about working in class or you're working in an employment environment or volunteer environment, and certainly in your applications, the highest frequency of usage of Gen AI tools has been to finesse your application. So making sure your spelling is right, making sure you're using sort of the right grammar, the right way to sort of express your position or whatever your statement happens to be. So there's certainly ways where you can finesse your personal statement in a manner that really, you can write it in a particular way. Overall, though, I would really encourage you to just use it for that specific purpose, to really help you kind of clarify your ideas, maybe even sort of help you, if you need to, perhaps make sure you can recreate this essay to fit in whatever space constraints or word character constraints. There's a way you can carefully generate a prompt that will allow you to do that. But as it always is, and I think one of the things that we will tell people is, like, remember, just think of AI as like an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old. They're really cool and savvy with technology, but they don't know how you think. They'll do what it wants to think. I won't say it will hallucinate for you, but trust Gen AI just as you would a random 8, 9, 10-year-old with your essay. And you really don't want your entire professional career to be in the hands of an 8, 9, or 10-year-old. So use it very wisely. Use it for the proper purposes, but always make sure you verify what's being generated. And certainly be very mindful that if you're using public AI tools, whatever you send into the cloud will be part of the next learning model that they're going to use. So please, whatever you do not upload any personal or confidential data information into a public LLM. It's not a good idea to, for whatever reason, put in your social security number. Don't do that. Please don't do that. So be mindful of that when you're uploading things into Claude, into Gemini, into ChatGPT, or anything like that, whether it's paid or not. Just as I said, use it as a tool, not as a substitute for your brain.
I think that's some good points there. I have not heard it characterized as an 8 to 10-year-old, but I have heard it characterized, I think, by Kevin Kelly, who was the founder of Wired, as like a summer intern. And his point was, like, you would never allow something, as a corporation, you would never allow something a summer intern had written to go out the door without an extensive review. And so, keep in mind that, as well as another approach I think that can be effective is, rather than asking AI to rewrite something for you, ask it for bullet points of what things it would change, but not necessarily give you specific text. So
yeah. I just say 8 to 10-year-olds because I can't imagine any of the people who are writing applications to have an intern. So
yeah, that's a good point. So, and I think the different application services have different policy statements that you're required to sign regarding AI. Can you speak a little bit to that? Because I know that we've seen on the forums the MCAS one, I think, changed. Like the first year that ChatGPT was kind of around, they were like, do not use it at all. And now they've changed it so it reads more, it needs to be your unique work.
Yes. So please, I agree. Please make sure that you read into any of, I'm trying to see if it's in the certification document here for TMD-SAS, because they go through a whole lot of stuff here. Let me see if let's see if I can find the term. I don't know if they have the term here for AI here. I guess they don't in this particular, no, I guess I don't see it here. So one of the things that you do want to make sure and you do want to check into is the individual codes of conduct for applicants for each of your application services, and see if there is anything specific about the use of generative AI in this in terms of what they consider their policy for artificial intelligence. I'm just sorry. I'm just going to see if I can find one on here in TMD-SAS if they come up with something. If not, well, okay, well, we'll just figure it out from here. So MCAS, I think PharmCAS recently changed theirs. So if you're applying to pharmacy school, please make sure you look into what the PharmCAS application says regarding use of the AI. It previously has been a statement that prohibits significant use of AI in a particular way. So it's like you have to affirm that you never, quote unquote, never had AI influence any of your writing, that it's absolutely completely your own work and so forth from there. I've seen, obviously, as more and more programs and more people have a better idea of the use of generative AI in, I'm just going to go back to essays here, in the way that we write applications or prepare applications, they're starting to at least concede that, the uses that I mentioned before, which is, light finessing, light editing of your essays, is acceptable use of generative AI, but not something, as I mentioned, as completely writing, answers or responses with generative Gen AI, at least not without your oversight or your involvement in making sure that the answer it generates is the one that you want to write. And I hope you don't really submit something that a generative AI program produces for you. I hope it's something based on something you believe in, or at least is something that you can attest to. So, please, we have written an article about that in terms of what we've found from various surveys about how applicants have been using Gen AI tools, and we are continuing to do a lot of survey work about this. So we hope we can, as this landscape finally solidifies a little bit more, we hope to get a little bit more of an understanding of how Gen AI is acceptably used in higher education in general, as well as in the application process. So just keep in mind, use it as minimally as you can, but also, I think there's a recognition it's not going to go away anytime soon. Many admissions processes are adjusting to that fact and will likely find ways to really assess you in the absence of or where you are unable to access Gen AI tools for your responses, whether they be for interviews or for whatever else. So just making sure you're aware.
Okay, and I just wanted to remind everyone, if they did want to submit questions, we are still taking questions. So you can put those in the comments under whatever area you're watching this on, if it's Facebook, if it's on LinkedIn, or if it's on YouTube. So one thing that I think a lot of people want to do is get some help. They want to get some eyeballs on their personal statement. So how do you recommend that students go about getting feedback on their personal statements?
So obviously you really need a group of trusted individuals who can give you honest feedback and hopefully have some idea that, everything goes, no holds barred, be absolutely honest as possible about your impressions or the reader's impressions about what you wrote. So, so take that into account when it comes to choosing individuals you want to read your personal statement drafts and give you feedback. Now, certainly SDN, those of us who are on SDN have had a long-standing program where volunteer members will read personal statements. So if you're, I think, on veterinary medicine, allopathic and osteopathic medicine, I don't know. I think we will have dental medicine also on board as well, as we usually do. We'll have people specifically read for those specific programs or those specific career paths. That can, if they are available and they have the time, they volunteer their time to read your personal statement and hopefully give you advice, whether it's basics in terms of grammar, words, or something a little bit more organizational regarding how you present your experiences, how all the experiences connect with each other for some relevant or some at least hopefully apparent narrative or sort of story arc, something of that nature. What is important is that you get feedback from as many, well, not quite, you don't need a whole army, but you just need enough trusted people, maybe 4 or 5 people, to really give you independent feedback on what their impressions are of your essay. This may also include anybody who is writing your reference letter. So a lot of people have already written a draft for their personal statement for, at least to help your references write very strong recommendation letters. It's at least one of the things that they'll ask you for. If you are part of a very active pre-health advising group, whether it's at the undergraduate level or post-bac or graduate level, especially if they're writing anything related to a committee letter or a committee evaluation, they likely will have wanted you to submit a personal statement draft as well. Hopefully they will be as upfront as possible. Just ask them if they give feedback for your personal statement, if there's anything that they feel you can improve, whatever impressions they feel they have of you based on what you've written and areas you could probably clarify a little bit more. So those are probably some very reliable ways for you to find personal statements. Writing Center, of course, is really good if you have access to one. They likely would be ones that would really help parse a little bit more of your technical writing. A career services office might also be really good, and they may be a little bit more inclined to look at your application and see how it works, especially when it comes to addressing motivation for a career. So again, depends on what each of their specialties are. And again, that's just a hyper generalization. There may be people who are in writing centers who can attest to more motivational, sort of aspirational type writing that you'd want to see in a personal statement. There are also many of you, if you have a few of you that have written for really competitive scholarships, say for a Fulbright, Rhodes Scholarship, you probably know, having gone through that process, that you've had to write a personal statement there. If you had ever applied to a pipeline program such as the Summer Health Professions Education Program, you had to write a personal statement for them too. So for many of you, you may have already had feedback from various other past versions of personal statements. And so incorporating all of that into this relatively newer application personal statement, it just really depends on like who you can marshal to help give you support. Now, I would have hoped that you would have asked for this help maybe a couple months before. Ideally, maybe by the start of this calendar year. That would have been ideal, because then at that time, most professors, most of us probably don't have as much, don't have the urgency that you now feel, because it's the start of the application cycle. So we probably can spend a little bit more time wordsmithing or really trying to iron out some of the challenges in regards to your narrative. It's not to say that it can't happen now, but I'm sure for many of you, you're a little antsy because you probably would have liked to have this type of feedback. And certainly there's a point where you really you can't just completely adjust to every single person. You can't please everybody, but you can try to get a consensus from most people in terms of, what your impressions are in your writing. That really is most important. So that's how you should get feedback. Make sure you give them nice cookies, Starbucks cards, whatever some, if it's people that some sign of appreciation for their time would be very, that would be courteous. So.
Okay. We've gone through all the questions that we had come up with. If anybody has any questions, feel free. We can still answer them in the comments. Are there any other items that we haven't covered that you think you want to make sure people are aware of?
So we did have someone put a comment on the forums, just basically giving some general advice on really how important it is when you write a personal statement or any essay for that matter, for you to understand that, it's really important to grab our attention early. No one has time to read all your lovely experiences up till now. So please understand the first paragraph must be impactful and eye-catching. I don't know about eye-catching. We're not like painting pictures or something like that, but still, you do want to keep our attention. I tell people all the time, my perspective when it comes to reading personal statements comes from my years of having to screen applications as a director of admissions and even training others to screen applications as well. A lot of our times the workload is pretty impressive and formidable. I know I've had to create schedules where we're splitting applications and people have to read 100 applications every day for 6 months. So in terms of the first paragraph being impactful and eye-catching, it needs to at least capture our attention, because we're going to forget you very, very quickly. If we literally are spending maybe a minute reading your personal statement before moving on to the rest of your application, if that's actually how we actually will read your application, you got to make sure that it's memorable. I will tell people that the personal statement for me is, if this were employment, you would write a cover letter. A cover letter basically is, hi, my name is this. I'm applying for your job, this particular job. Here are my qualities for this job these are things that make me qualified for the job in terms of experiences and stuff like that, that are highlights of what the resume will tell you about me. So I hope you contact me for a first round interview. That's pretty much what your cover letter says. And you keep it extremely succinct, and you send that in, or at least you type it into the employment portal, whatever it is. And then you have to type in or upload your resume, something like that. Resume in this case is work and activities. We'll get to that in a different day. But basically your personal statement acts sort of like a cover letter in that sense, in that we really want to get to know the essence of who you are and get excited to read the rest of your application, which is another thing that I think in terms of what admissions committees expect. We want to get excited because we're reading 100 of these. We ultimately have to pick, the top 10 every day of over 100 applications. It gets really tough to do that. So, I want you to respect the fact that it's a lot of work, and we read really quickly. We have to. We don't have all the time in the entire world to sort of, leisurely go through your personal statement. So you need to make your points fast and furious. You need to make sure that you not only grab our attention, but you keep our attention too. A lot of people really emphasize the eye-catching, impactful first paragraph. That's great. Don't disappoint us, please. If you have a great first impactful statement, and then it kind of peters out, that's not great. That's not how you keep our attention. So, please make sure that, everything makes sense. You make us excited to read more about you in the rest of your application. And if you do that, that's going to be very nice. In the end, though, I think one of the things that you have to remember, we will ultimately read everything. Someone will read your entire application, including secondaries, cover to cover, and include possibly your letters as well. Just understand it's a lot of reading we have to do. We recognize and acknowledge all the effort you put into it, but we have to basically make some real quick decisions and process. Make it easy for us to see what you're trying to say and what your values and what the highlights really are. And if you do that, then let's let the process run and just make sure we evaluate you for the merits of your profile, and not have you be held back by some weird technical sort of weird issue that we clearly can't understand what you're saying in your application. So I think those are some very important pieces that I will tell people.
Great. We don't have any questions, so we can go ahead and start to wrap things up. I'll go ahead and pull this up. This is you had mentioned that the resume part of your application is the work and activities, and that's actually what we're going to be covering, not next week because it's Mother's Day weekend, but the following week at 9 p.m. Eastern. So please come back. Please come with your questions to ask about what those work and activities items are and how you should approach that section of the application. And then also, I just also wanted to highlight that if you are watching this on a replay, that we do offer advice on call. Emil Chuck can answer your questions. So if you go to the studentdoctor.net website and go to resources and select the advice on call option, you're going to be able to schedule an appointment with Emil Chuck and get your questions answered. And this is a service that we provide as part of our nonprofit mission. Student Doctor Network is published by a nonprofit, the Health Professional Student Association. And so this is one of the services that we do offer as part of that nonprofit mission, is to help students who otherwise wouldn't be able to get access to the kind of advice that they need to be a successful applicant. So again, I wanted to thank everybody who has watched this and participated, and we look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks when we talk about the work and activities section. Thank you and have a good evening.